Live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group in beautiful downtown Maplewood, it's the St. Louis Realtor Podcast with your host, Adam Kruse.
All right, welcome everybody to the Hermann London Real Estate Group St. Louis Realtor Podcast, live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group in beautiful downtown Maplewood, Missouri. I'm Adam Kruse, and we've got our producer here, Joey Vosevich, and we're excited because we have a very special guest in the studio, Alicia Sierra, Realtor extraordinaire, Realtor to the stars, Realtor with clients worldwide, right? We're going to jump right into our interview and our talk and everything with Alicia. We've got some interesting topics planned. I just want to give a couple quick updates. We've got our Hermann London Company picnic coming up soon. That's something we do every year, and everyone's always very excited. We have a great time with that. I did the Realtor City Tour today. We toured a bunch of different properties in the Tower Grove East area and the Compton Heights area. We went through about 10 houses. So many interesting properties there. I was actually surprised by some of the price points. I was surprised that there was houses in the, $400,000 in that area. That was great. Also, we are very excited here. I actually just cracked open a beer because we just finished our audit. The Hermann London property management team was audited by the Missouri Real Estate Commission, and so we just finished that. We're very excited, and so we're going to have a beer to that. But I'm going to jump right in. I've got Alicia here, and she's a very, very, very busy woman, so I don't want to take too much of your time. Alicia, how are you today?
On my way out, actually. No, I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to have you here because I think that we've interviewed other investor type of people before. We've never interviewed a realtor who works, I guess, so closely with so many different investors and actually closes so many deals. There's a lot of realtors that say they do investment deals, but I know personally because I see all the closings that you have. You're closing a lot of deals. How do you even keep that all straight?
Assistance.
You have a lot of assistance?
I have assistance with the paperwork.
Okay, that's
yes.
good. And that's something I'm always trying to encourage realtors to get as assistants, and they don't seem to listen to me. So that's something you believe in?
Yes. I think that delegation in all areas of your life is good.
That works for you?
I think it works. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
It makes a lot more sense for me to find the next investor than to be dotting the last I.
Well, you're an interesting realtor because you've been doing this a while. Obviously, you're very successful. Were you born into a real estate family, or how did you kind of fall into this career?
No, I was not born into a real estate family. I was born into a family that left some really great real estate, i.e. the island of Havana.
Okay.
For some better real estate in the United States.
Okay.
But I'm going to completely give away my age because I'm looking really good on this podcast right now. But catfishing the heck out of you guys right now. But no, it all started with insomnia and some cheesy late night Carlton Sheets infomercials.
Oh, really?
Circa 19...
Okay.
kind of a while back.
Things broke up there.
Exactly. The interest in real estate. But as far as selling investment property in St. Louis City and St. Louis County, I'm about 9 years into that gig, into that aspect of the business.
Okay, and so you act as a realtor. You do some of your own investing?
I do.
And you do some of your own like rehabbing and flipping?
I do.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
Good. You do stay busy then.
I do.
Well, so you're a good person to ask. I mean, I don't know. There's 1,000 things I want to ask you today and talk about with you today. I know you're busy and we got to stick with our timelines and stuff like that. But tell us from what you see. I think you do kind of follow spreadsheets, right? You're sort of a spreadsheet person. So tell me some of the changes that you're seeing in the market and residential market or just in the investment market in general.
My impression of the market, I think is more from my experience and just watching the inventory every day as opposed to watching a line on a graph. But when I started, it was the beginning of the crash, and it was sort of a feeding frenzy onto just countless foreclosures. It was hard to keep up with tracking all the properties every single day, and that has dropped off dramatically.
The number of foreclosures has dropped.
The number of foreclosures. I mean, that's what we're hearing, but that's what I'm experiencing is the number of foreclosures has dropped off dramatically. However, at the same time, only cash buyers could really play that game because the financing opportunities went away. And so it seems to be inversely related. So now we have less inventory, but we have more opportunities for credit financing. So the cash buyers, obviously, they still have their cash, but there's more buyers at the same time vying for less inventory.
Does that make it harder for you? Because your clients are mainly cash buyers, right?
My clients are mainly cash buyers. I mean, cash buyers still have an advantage in that they can offer more quick closing, a more sure thing for a seller. However, they're still competing more. Real estate, one thing that's always interesting is it will never stay the same. So I fully expected the market to change. And I think that inventory will appear. It's just going to come from something different than high number of foreclosures.
I'm not seeing like a lowering, I guess I would say, in the amount of deals that you guys are doing or that your clients are buying, that type of thing. Are you just buying less foreclosures and more properties that are owned by non-banks?
No, the volume is actually lower for me than it was at the peak 4 to 6 years ago in that time frame. However, you just have to diversify the type of deals that you're going to do. I wasn't doing, for example, so many listings of renovated properties. I'm doing more of those, for example.
Okay.
But I think the inventory is going to come more from baby boomers downsizing, moving, or unfortunately estates. Older people that have been in homes for a long time. Obviously, it's not a big secret that baby boomer generation is getting older. So they're either passing away or moving. And that's going to be a big source. But also, ironically, I find that a lot of people, there were a lot of dealers buying those low-priced homes and then fixing and selling them or selling them in their current condition during the peak of the inventory. Uh-huh. And a lot of uneducated, out-of-state individual buyers picked up inventory, which hasn't necessarily been as great an experience for them as they had hoped.
Okay, so they might have been trying to, like, competing against you and your clients before, but now you're having the opportunity to buy those properties back from them at a higher price or about the same price?
No, I mean, I'm unfortunately, I mean, I didn't necessarily sell these properties, but I do see a lot of more private sales of properties at a loss. You know, just for example, I looked at one the other day where, I don't know, it sold for about 3 years ago for about $50,000, and it needs a lot of work now. So it was poorly managed. Uh-huh. Probably damaged by a tenant, right. And now, you know, they're either facing the choice of pouring a lot more money into the property or cutting their losses and selling it as it is now. So I do see a lot of that because of the challenge of owning a property where you don't live. And
they don't want to pour money into it. They have a bad taste in their mouth for that particular property for some reason. So now you guys can buy it and pour money into it.
Correct. There's less inventory, but also the sources of inventory are shifting.
That's good because as the market crashed, you kind of got into it. It sounds like maybe around the same time I did when things were sort of going downhill. But you hear a lot of realtors who were just kind of got out of the business because they said, oh, the market's bad. Oh, there's no deals to be done or whatever. And they kind of got out of the business.
No, the retail business did hurt a lot at that time.
But some people, they had to change their business model, right? They had to kind of try to do different things. And it sounds like you've done that. You've been flexible.
Yes, you have to adapt to the market. And it will for sure never stay the same.
Are your people buying properties mainly that cash flow, or that they're hoping to be long-term holds that are going to appreciate, or a little mix of both, or what's kind of the formula that you're seeing be successful today?
Generally speaking, I see buyers in different camps. And the most successful investors choose a certain course or plan of action, and that's the one they focus on and set up their business model for. Okay. So there is the camp of buying purely for cash flow. So they'll use a measurement tool. Mm-hmm. Like either a simple formula that the gross rent has to be 3 times the total investment in the property. That's extreme, or a cap rate.
Well, can I go back to that? The gross rent for the year?
The gross rent would be, if the house costs $30,000, they're trying to hit somewhere between 2.5 and 3 times that. So a rent rate of like $800 to $900 a month. So that is an extreme example. So that might be
$30,000, cut the last 3 zeros
right.
off it.
That might be like a 2-family in either somewhere in South City or North City. That would be probably a city property. And that's just a quick, simple measurement to quickly evaluate the potential of a deal. Others are more precise from the get-go. They put in all the real numbers, as you know, a particular measurement for projected maintenance costs.
Right.
Real numbers for taxes and insurance, and calculate the cap rate.
Okay.
And,
They have a certain cap rate they like to buy at.
There's a certain cap rate that they like to buy at. And, for listeners who don't know what that is.
Talk to me about cap rate. What is it?
That is your total investment in a property.
Total investment.
Divided by your annual net income.
Divided by net income.
So you take the total income for the year and you subtract out percentage for vacancy.
Okay.
Different camps. Some people are more or less conservative there. They might say it's going to be vacant on average 1 month a year. Other people might say 2 months a year. You subtract a percentage for maintenance costs. Some people consider, well, especially in high cash flow properties, you probably anticipate a little higher maintenance costs. Maybe as high as 25%. I see people use as low as 10%.
Okay.
And then real costs for property taxes and insurance and utilities.
But nothing to do with your mortgage payment or anything like that. Cap rate ignores that.
Well, that's a cash-on-cash calculation.
Okay.
If that's what they're using, that's what a cash buyer would use. Yeah, that would be your
Because
return based on a cash purchase.
And it's not fair to include the mortgage and all that in there because it's different for everyone.
Well, because if you're mortgaging part of it and you're only using your cash investment, it's even going to come out higher for whatever you are investing of your cash. I mean, you're going to take out your payment if that were the case.
Right.
So, I mean, without the risk of getting too technical, the point is that an investor, a prepared investor, will have already chosen a calculation that he or she is comfortable with using and applies to evaluate a property that they're considering purchasing. So, generally speaking, the higher the cash flow, the lower to non-existent the potential appreciation of the property, because they're typically in more economically depressed areas in general, just generally speaking in any city or metro area. Okay,
so for the realtors that are listening, it's important for them to understand the different methods that an investor might use, right?
Yeah, so you can speak their language.
Speak their language. If a new investor calls and they say, hey, I want to invest in some real estate, the realtor should be able to ask them specific questions about what their formula is.
Exactly. And also know what pieces of information that they can provide to help them with that calculation.
To fill that out. Okay. To help them evaluate a property for them.
Right, because each client's different. Some like to do their own research. Some of them, they'll want you to provide for example, the last year's property tax rate.
And then maybe they'll use that to probably still do some of their own evaluation.
Correct.
Have you seen investors that are trying to go off all these different methods and they're not successful? Or do you just see the ones that are most successful say, here's our formula, I don't want to see or talk about anything outside of this formula, and I'm just going to buy as long as it meets this formula?
Generally speaking, the most successful investors have a game plan and specific parameters that they can tell me what, they can explain those parameters to me, and they want to see something that's at least could be reasonably fit into those parameters.
Okay.
So it's my job to bring them properties, whether they be on the MLS or off the MLS, that are potential opportunities within those parameters.
I used to go to a lot of networking events and meet with a lot of different real estate investors. And, I could be sitting at a table with 15 different real estate investors, and I was always kind of interested or amazed that one of them, they all had their own formula. They all had their own model, right? One of them bought only near colleges. One of them bought only multifamily.
Yes.
One of them bought only single families in lower income areas or whatever. And they all have their own formula. I guess none of them are necessarily wrong or right. It's just what works for them.
Yeah, no, I would measure success by whether or not their own game plan is working out.
Okay.
That would be the measurement of success, because that's one of the beautiful things about real estate. There are so many strategies that help you grow wealth in real estate. There's countless strategies. It's like multi-dimensional game of Monopoly.
And now you mentioned that you're also an investor.
Yes.
And that probably makes it a little bit harder for you, having such a strong understanding of all these different formulas and having such a good finger on the pulse of the market in all these different areas. What type of investor are you?
Well, I mean, currently, I'm a kind of investor who likes to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves currently. So right now, I see opportunities in flipping a turnkey rental property. And we define turnkey by meaning that they are sold in complete and utter rent-ready condition. And some people would say that turnkey also includes tenant placement as well.
Okay.
Placement of a qualified tenant. Just depends on your definition. They're lower risk, lower profit spread renovation projects. They're also a little easier to identify projects than retail flips right now, because the retail flips in the areas that are the strongest selling markets, as you can imagine, there's a lot of investors vying for those projects. And they're also competing against owner occupants, because as a result of the real estate crash, we have grown-ups now that grew up through that and are accustomed to terms like Fannie Mae foreclosure and HUD foreclosure.
Right.
And those concepts in a way that my generation wasn't. So, you're competing with owner occupants who are willing to take advantage of foreclosure opportunities, and sometimes banks and sellers who are willing to cater to them in ways they weren't previously.
So you said some of these deals are lower risk, lower profit. Does that mean, like you, for example, buy a property, you take on a lot of the risk of the rehab and the question marks and the what ifs, and are there termites and are there these problems? You deal with a lot of those risks by doing the rehab and getting the inspections and doing all that type of thing. But then you're going to obviously get profit for what you're doing. So the person who's buying it from you, they can be more confident that the building is in good condition.
Correct.
They're not going to have big...
And the homes that are rentals aren't generally as viable product for retail owner-occupant buyers. They're smaller homes with smaller rooms, usually one bathroom, etc. You're not covering as much ground, and they're newer construction for St. Louis anyway. By St. Louis standards, something that's mid-century is a lot less risk to take on than our 100-year-old brick stock buildings.
Are they lower priced too?
They're lower priced, lower
So if a buyer's
spread.
going out looking at properties, they're like, I'll just use some fake numbers, for example, but they're like looking at homes between 80 and 140, let's say. So they see the house that you have listed, let's call it 80, and they go, this is nice, it's been rehabbed, it's done well, but I just don't know. I'm just not sure.
Well, these homes aren't on the open market. Generally, with the turnkey rental, you have a buyer who's waiting for that product.
Oh, so you already have a buyer in
You have a buyer in mind, which is why it's reduced risk and reduced profit spread. But I'm glad you brought up those lower priced, the first time home buyer. Those are lower profit margins as well for investors. They're a little bit easier to find. For example, some of the bread and butter St. Louis neighborhoods like Christie Park.
Right.
In and around there. $80,000 to $120,000 resale home. It's a project that doesn't take as long, a little more straightforward. You don't need as high end of finishes. So it's a lower risk because it's still low enough that if for some reason the market shifted and the house didn't sell,
you don't have so much invested in it.
You don't have as much invested. It's not as financially devastating. You could rent the home until the market shifted back.
And it's easier to find, you're saying?
Yeah. So if I do enter into retail, I tend to prefer those lower end projects. But I know plenty of people who do remarkably well in higher end projects, including historic tax credits and all of that with the beautiful housing stock that we have in St. Louis. It's just a different strategy. And then there's plenty of investors, as you know, who just like to work really hard to find great deals and sell them at a markup in their current fixer-upper condition. And we call those wholesalers, yes.
And I love wholesaling.
Yes, which is, as a real estate agent, not necessarily a wholesaler, but it kind of works the same way. If I'm trying to find an off-market deal or even an as-is deal on the MLS, I'm getting paid to identify and handle the transaction, but I am taking a property in its current condition from one owner to the next owner who's going to take on the rehab because the current seller doesn't have the time, inclination, or funds or the funds to renovate the property and sell it at a retail full price. The kinds of properties that I find the most difficult sales on the market, would you agree, Adam, are the ones that aren't technically distressed condition. They're well kept, they're clean, they're livable, but they're not modernized and renovated. If you've ever watched House Hunters on HGTV, somebody would be complaining that there wasn't granite countertop and stainless steel appliances. And I find those I call them they're like the little land of misfit listings.
Right.
because it's like your mom or dad's house and it's nice and clean and well kept and it's got its awesome systems and everything, but they don't understand what's wrong with the Chintz and Prince wallpaper.
Well, I went through a few today,
Yeah.
and I'm walking through these houses, and the listing agent's like, we just don't understand why it's not selling. And there's just something about it, right? It's just something about it just didn't feel right. And maybe that's because I am a millennial, but I'm like, I don't know, I just can't get my head around it, you know? And I'm like, I guess just lower the price. So I think that's sort of what you're talking about.
But there's I call that the purgatory houses. That's the other thing I call them. They're just a little bit of limbo. They're not quite spiffed up enough to command a price in the retail range. And generally speaking, millennials, for the most part on the open market, they just want to move in, fill the fridge up with their PBRs and call it a day.
Yeah.
They really don't want to take on much more than a Pinterest project as far as their home projects go. God bless them. I can't say I blame them. You know, they want to be free to do other things. So either that or they're looking for the equity, and it's got to be a little more extreme than tiny little piece of equity for the trouble.
So if you have a home listed right now and your realtor is saying, hey, we need to do a price drop, $5,000, $10,000, should you be saying to yourself, wait, but I don't have granite, I don't have stainless, I don't have hardwoods maybe. Instead of doing a $10,000 price drop, should I do these things? Should I get granite? Should I get some stainless? Should I redo my hardwoods? And my house is going to sell tomorrow?
This is where listing your house with, or at least involving an investor agent like myself in the evaluation and listing of your house is a real asset to even a homeowner. Not just an investor, because I've also seen investors make the wrong calls with certain
like the updates to do. You mean?
On the updates to do, yes, because they apply, especially part-time investors that they're not necessarily making their full-time living. They're just trying to do a couple extra projects a year,
Right.
Because they apply their own, especially when they're older, they apply their own aesthetic sensibility or priorities to the project instead of really finding out what the priorities of their end buyers are,
Right.
which can be very different. I mean, I know I put more importance in very different things than 25-year-olds and 30-year-olds do now. It's not good or bad. It's just you have to consider if I'm selling a house in a neighborhood like Tower Grove East, by and large, I'm going to have, you know, a younger buyer or hipper buyer, so to speak, not necessarily a millennial age, but a millennial sentiment. You know, you really need to do a very more than a cursory evaluation. You really got to do a sort of an in-depth evaluation. And as you also know, there's a difference between one neighborhood to the next in the city in very close proximity. So your Compton Heights buyer has a little different sort of thing going on in different price range than your Tower Grove East buyer and so on. So you really have to know those neighborhoods. And I really recommend more of a neighborhood specialist when it comes to evaluating the value and where you can get it. More bang for your buck.
You know, it's interesting to me because we talk about, you and I just like in our general day, we talk about a lot of different topics. You love talking about millennials. You love talking about trends, right? It seems to me like any seller should consider calling you because you do a lot more analyzing of the market and of trends and that type of thing than your average realtor does. You know, your average realtor might kind of look on Pinterest or whatever, but you're kind of like studying data and that type of thing.
I actually kind of do read a lot of articles that come up. This is my new obsession with the Twitter feed because
I know you love the Twitter machine.
I do, because you get really quick, easily accessed, information, and a lot of it straight from the millennials' mouths because they're the ones doing Next STL, for example, is one that I follow on Twitter, and STL.
We interviewed him a few podcasts ago.
Yeah, and STL Social and Treehouse Networking. Just what are they talking about? What events are they excited about? Where are they living? And also Next STL, they put out a lot of good data about the developments that are going on. It's amazing. And it's just really easy to connect, and, you can just do a little at Next STL. I'm sure there's a technical word I'm not hip enough to know here. But anyway, tweet, and you'll get feedback. You'll get data just by connecting easily on social media.
Speaking of trends, speaking of all this stuff, tell me, what do you think IKEA is going to do to, like, St. Louis? Are we going to start seeing it in IKEA kitchens all over the place? Or are we going to start seeing...
I think we're going to see a resurgence of the meatball.
What is that?
In St. Louis.
I love meatballs.
They serve Swedish
food to me.
They serve Swedish meatballs when you shop there.
Oh, they do.
Is that where I'll be able to find you now after it opens?
Yes. It's free Swedish meatballs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Are you in?
I'm going to wait till I'm sure there's going to be lines for like miles to go.
I think I'm too old for that. I think
too old for meatballs?
I'm too old for the lawn at the amphitheater, and I'm too old for the line at IKEA, but I'll give it a few weeks.
We got to wait till it dies down because I need to go there and buy this closet that I want for one of my rehabs. But do you think it's going to be you
could probably order it online, but
do they have online? I thought they didn't have online.
I think they do. But anyway, we digress.
We digress. Are you going to start to see a lot more IKEA stuff in houses?
Yes.
Do you think millennials will like IKEA?
I think they will love it. I think they like all of those. The Midwest is always a few years behind, but I think they like all those tiny house type storage solutions.
Oh, the tiny houses.
And the clean lines and the great design. I think it's still St. Louis. So, we still like our historic details and, our particular architectural details. We still have a love for that. Let's face it. We also have some not so pretty housing stock.
We do.
It's just, there's really nothing redeeming about some of these shotgun houses. Mm-hmm. Some of them, they just don't have necessarily. They were, built by working class people. And so they don't have as much as the flourishes and the architectural detail. So, I do think that you're going to see renovations in those in the mid-century apartment buildings and stuff. I think it would appeal very much to those.
Did you hear that
tenants.
You used to be able to buy a house like from the Sears catalog?
Yes.
I
see those in North County all the time. Those post-war
How can we tell if it was
houses.
a Sears house?
A Sears kid house?
Is that what it was?
Yeah. Sometimes there's a mark on the house, which I've seen.
Big S?
There's a Sears mark somewhere on the house.
Okay. So what
Sometimes.
it was, you would buy a house and they would just send you it in a bunch of pieces?
It was a kid house. Yeah, you'd pour the foundation and they would assemble the house.
It's like an IKEA house, basically.
Yeah, and it would come with the kitchen and everything.
It comes in a box and you have to put it together?
Yeah, well, then we have manufactured homes now.
Let's see. I want to go through a few statistics. You found this awesome thing on, I guess, was this on Realtor.com?
Yeah, National Association of Realtors put this out on Twitter.
On Twitter, okay. So being our statistics guru here, you are, and we've been talking about this a lot, so this kind of plays into our conversation.
You're making me sound a lot more nerdy spreadsheet than I am.
I think it's all in your, I don't mean to say it's all in your head, but I think you keep it organized in your head, right? I know you have spreadsheets for the properties and your clients and that type of thing, but you kind of seem to know these statistics about the millennials. So I hear baby boomers are moving into cities. This says that by 2050, 7/10 of people will live in cities. So I don't know what that means. How do they know that? How do they know what's going to happen, 20, 30 years from now?
I guess they're saying if this particular current trend continues.
Will cities just be bigger? Like we're sitting in Maplewood right now, which is in the county. Will this just be part of the city? The city,
St. Louis is a little different because we drew that hardcore city county line.
Right.
So when I think of like city, I also sort of include the inner ring.
Uh-huh.
Of suburbs, but walkability trend, I don't really see that going away.
So it's not just downtown like we think of it. It would include the city like Lindenwood Park or anything,
yes.
Tower Grove East or anything like that.
Yes.
Okay, this said transportation is number 2 cost of all household spending. That shocks me.
Yes.
How are people spending more in transportation than they are in beer? Or I wonder what the number one,
Well, something's got to give. Either people need to live closer to work or their telecommuting needs to increase. If gas prices aren't going to really stay low and they're going to potentially increase, I could see where transportation costs.
This must apply more to people like my friend who lives in O'Fallon, drives literally an hour to work, pays something like $10 a day to park, works all day, and then drives an hour home. I'm sure his transportation cost is huge.
Yeah. It really does add up.
And a lot of us have seen the TV show about tiny houses. This talks about that there's starting to be more urban environments designed to meet the demands of people wanting to live in the city. They talk about buildings that have green space on them. Mm-hmm. They're talking about micro apartments, and that plays into the whole IKEA thing too, I guess, because you can like get a bed that transforms into a kitchen that transforms into a kitchen table, yes. Right? Type of thing. Have you started seeing any of that lately, or are you?
No, I haven't seen any of that, but I did read about a development. I think I read it on Next STL's blog about a development in the Shaw neighborhood by an out-of-town developer.
Okay.
That is 2 to 4 bedroom apartments designed for roommate living. So there's more people who are single but want to have housemates as grown-ups. because they can share obviously not only expenses, but also if they have a pet, for example, it makes it easier for them to travel.
I wonder what makes, so it's not like a shared living space where there's one kitchen and then everyone kind of has their own like bedroom or whatever, but it's like apartments that are, I wonder what makes it designed for roommate.
I'm not exactly sure, but I did remember that they were having mixers to help people meet roommates.
Did you go?
No, I have way too many roommates right now.
So
I don't think anybody wants to be in a communal living situation with me.
Maybe it's like each person
kids.
has their own bedroom. Each person maybe has their own bathroom or something, and maybe their own living room, but they share a kitchen. Or
I think that would, yes, I would think that each adult at least wants their own bathroom. But I don't know. It didn't really go into or at least I didn't look at the floor plans. But just the idea that, in such a quintessential Midwest city like St. Louis, that there's a developer who feels like they can take advantage of the communal living trend here.
Yeah.
Also, presumably the emergence of the startup activity. Mm-hmm. And, a development like Cortex Development in the Central West End that's centered around the Brain Trust.
Right.
Keeping our brain trust here, but also attracting out-of-town trained, educated professionals from out of town to move to St. Louis because we do have a lower cost of living, etc. I mean, you're not necessarily going to have everybody dwelling here who's got a Midwest sentiment.
And so a lot of those people want to live in kind of more urban environments where they can walk to things, walk to the grocery store.
We're always going to have our suburbanites. We're not San Francisco. We're not New York City. We're always going to have the, people who want to spread out in the suburbs. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's not going to be such a given as it was when I was coming up through my 20s. I mean, everybody lived a few years in the city after they got out of college, and the vast majority of us planned to move out into the suburbs whenever, we were ready to have kids.
You're a realtor who specializes in a lot of different things. You do a lot of work with investors. So much work that you even have a word for people who do work with non-investors called retail, which retail realtors don't call themselves retail realtors, right? But that's okay. We'll take it. But so tell me, just give me like a quick overview. If I want to become an investor, mm-hmm. before I call you or after I call you, what are some things that I need to consider? What would you, if I'm going, hey, I want to invest in some real estate, mm-hmm. I think I'll call Alicia. What kind of like conversation with myself would you want me to have before I call you?
I prefer if someone at least has a notion of what his or her personal financial goal is with real estate.
Okay, personal financial goals.
For example, am I building myself a small portfolio to hold long term to enhance my retirement? And or do I want to make an extra X number of dollars a year flipping property?
You can't help them achieve success if they don't know what success is to themselves.
Right. And I can have a conversation with them, not unlike the one I'm having with you about what I see in housing trends in St. Louis.
Okay. Or
the pros and cons of buying property for pure cash flow,
right.
or having a more conservative return, areas like Maplewood, for example. And, kind of a realistic take on that, because I've made my own mistakes over the years that I've been doing this.
Sure.
Made my own mistakes and had my own successes and pitfalls. So at least I can sort of pass that along, like you really need to consider A, B, and C. However, I don't think as a realtor, it's my job to be their financial advisor.
Okay.
I think that a financial advisor is a financial advisor. I can definitely give them some input as far as realistic numbers, because I do see people making pro forma sheets, projecting the performance of properties with what I would consider unrealistic numbers.
Okay.
There was always going to be something unanticipated with real estate and unanticipated expense. That being said, at the end of the day, they really need to determine what their own particular financial goals are and what they're comfortable with.
Number one step, risk. Figure out your goals.
Your goals, and then what your comfort level is with risk.
So like maybe an area that they're comfortable with, or
because you can have a goal, but you could go after that goal either more or less aggressively. How much are you, what are you comfortable with leveraging out of your available cash savings, that sort of thing? And if you are going to be using mortgages as a tool, then I suggest that you talk to a lender, probably one at a bank, and see what they offer a portfolio, and warehouse loans in-house, and talk to a qualified mortgage lender, preferably one who has worked with investors.
I'd like to ask you the 5 questions I ask everybody.
Oh, this is like that actor's studio.
This is just like the actor studio.
Okay, this isn't going to... Is he going to have to bleep some words out?
You never know what Joe's
I can tell you right now, it's boop.
He's got his finger on the boop button.
Yeah.
But first of all, I want to go over, and we'll go over it at the end too, but I want to go over, what is your Twitter, is it called the handle?
At Stand Up Agent.
Okay. What's your phone number?
314-766-0847.
And what if I'm shy and I want to email you?
I love email.
Okay.
I prefer it.
Prefer it? Oh, because you're shy.
No.
I don't think you're shy.
I'm not shy. It's just you'll hear back from me the fastest by email.
Okay.
Alicia, Alicia, at hermannlondon.com. HermannLondon. Probably you're seeing that on the website.
Sure,
So,
as you're listening.
As you're listening.
.com. Okay, perfect. So my 5 questions. And we get a little personal here, a little bit, it's okay. So tell me, Alicia, who lives under your roof?
In my fantasies or in my reality?
Currently, this is a Trey question. I got this question
I
from
have
Trey.
a husband, Mike, and 3 lovely children, 2 tweens and a teenager. I don't know what I was thinking.
Do you get all your millennial news? Is that considered millennial?
Actually, my oldest son's right at the cutoff.
So what are they then? X, Y, Gen, or whatever it's called? Gen Y?
The last year is supposed to be 2000, and he was born in 2001. So millennials allegedly
He's a millennial.
were born between 80 and 2000 is what I read. So he's kind of at the cutoff.
Oh, there's a statistic here that says millennials are going to stay living with their parents for another 15 to 20 years.
And that's why I'm moving to the... that's why I got a place where the upstairs is basically its own apartment.
Okay. Okay, and any animals?
We have a 3-pound Chihuahua.
Really?
Named Chiquita.
3 pounds. You can fit her in your hand?
I can.
Okay.
I mean, I can carry around with one hand.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So, where are you your best? Question number 2.
Well, you know this about me. I mean, I love to make people laugh. So
Right.
if I think I'm at my best, if I'm with people, whether they're my family, well, it's a mandatory trait for my family, colleagues, you possess this trait. I love to be around smart people who have a sense of humor.
Aw.
So those are the kinds of clients I prefer to work with.
So, do you have number 3, do you have a favorite blog or podcast that you like to listen to or read?
Right now, actually, I've never listened to a podcast until recently.
Okay.
When I was in Nashville this summer on vacation, I did an open mic, because as you know, I do comedy on the side.
Yes.
And I met a young man named Jesse Case, and he was actually on the verge of having his stand-up career explode. And he had to move back from Los Angeles to Nashville at the age of 29 because he got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and it was the most incredible stand-up performance I've ever seen in person, because it was obviously
From the heart
about his
kind of thing.
experience. So smart, so funny. Anyway, he's been doing a podcast during his chemotherapy,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's called Jesse v. Cancer.
Jesse v. Cancer. Okay.
Yes. So I recommend it. He unfortunately doesn't have a lot of his work on YouTube, but I hope that he gets well enough, because he's supposed to be going on tour. So I hope to see him here in St.
Okay.
Louis. So yeah, so that was my venture into podcasts. So now I'm kind of been doing a little exploring with
I think you should have your own
podcasts.
podcast, by the way. You'd be a great candidate for your own podcast.
Yeah, actually that's why I wanted this young man's card, because
Okay.
I'm working on putting my own blog together.
Joey will need a referral fee, of course.
And it's going to be called Get to the Funny Part.
Okay.
So we'll cover any number of topics, including but not limited to real estate.
Get to the funny part. Okay. Number 4. What is your guilty pleasure?
You know what? I'm guilty of the one thing that makes me forget all my troubles and makes me feel like maybe I do have my act together on my worst day is reality television.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you have one particular show?
I love. Well, I do love the $1 Million
Listing Agents.
and I love the Real Housewives of New York City and Beverly Hills in particular, because if you can have that much money and that much clout and act the fool like that, then maybe I do have my act together. But I would love to have my own, which would be $10,000 listing agent.
Okay.
Where instead of people coming in and complaining about no stainless steel, they're like, where are the pipes? Or instead of getting excited about the granite countertops, they get excited because the there's an AC there and it has a cage.
Yes. Okay.
So
that sounds like a
I
good
think
show.
it could be a really good show.
Yeah, I do too.
You know, put it all in perspective for New York and LA.
I'm into that. You know, we have a local studio here. I think Cool Fire Studio. Maybe they would do it for you. Get it going.
Well, hey, maybe it could be a Hermann London production.
Hermann London production.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, before we wrap it up, who is your mentor and how have you thanked them?
Who is my mentor?
This one, I'm hoping for tears here. You know, we're looking for tears.
I don't feel like I have any one real estate mentor per se.
Life mentor, whatever.
Although I did learn a lot from my former broker, Mark Kaufman,
Okay.
at Caldwell Banker Premier. He's a funny guy. He's very generous. And one of the biggest nuggets of advice he gave me was, if you can pay somebody else to do it, pay somebody else to do it. Because
Okay.
I think that really does hold a lot of
That's smart.
entrepreneurs back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But other than that, I would say, I mean, my biggest inspiration has to be my parents. Now, this is where you're going to get the reality show tears. They came to St. Louis in one of the hottest summers on record, July 1954. They weren't fleeing Havana, but all of the shenanigans was started, so they never went back.
Was it hotter here than it is in
It was
Cuba?
it was record-breaking heat. Yes. I mean, they never experienced that kind of humidity.
Okay.
They didn't have any money. They didn't have any air conditioning. And they didn't speak English. And
Oh,
my
gosh.
dad he was a resident, first at St. Mary's Hospital for the summer in East St. Louis, and then City Hospital, which, as you know, is now luxury condos. And my mom was only 18, and she didn't know a soul or speak the language.
Oh, wow.
And she had a husband working umpteen hours a day because he was learning a new language and, you know, learning how to be a doctor. You know, even my worst day, you couldn't put that in perspective. So they raised 5 kids and got them all through college.
So how have you thanked them?
I show up for dinner on Sundays.
They do a family dinner?
I take their annoying geriatric phone calls. I think
That's so nice.
that is so nice of me. Trust me. They've got, we're around and we're there to
Okay.
answer all questions from the mundane to the interesting on demand.
Okay, I guess that's all I have for you. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah. Cheers to real estate, because
Cheers.
I think it's one of the last remaining sort of democratic, capitalistic venues to build wealth and financial freedom.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't looked into it, you really should.
And if you've been talking about it for a long time and you haven't done anything, you really should, right?
You really should.
You really should.
Actually, yeah, I mean, look into it. No harm, no foul.
No harm, no foul. Call Alicia
Yes.
at Stand Up Agent Twitter.
On Twitter.
On Twitter. Give me
Yes.
your phone number one more time.
314-766-0847.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're an amazing guest. I hope to come back on again. I'm sure everyone will love to hear from you. Please, anyone who has questions, submit your questions so we can ask her these questions on air next time too. All right. Thanks again, Alicia. Take care.